Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. Gonna do another kind of debate slash conversation with my Christian friend Shane, JSP Kennedy, and I am Andrew, baby killing Mindgasms. And we're going to talk about a not at all contentious topic about whether abortion is murder because it's interfering with
Oh,
God's plan, as I remember you were saying before. And I wanted to, in all seriousness, talk about whether things like things like masturbation or any form of birth control are also murder because they're interfering with God's plan. So
okay.
to start off, let's I know you said it before one of the last times we talked, but can you just reiterate what your position is on abortion?
Well, me as an individual,
Yeah,
um, I, well, I used to be more pro-choice growing up, as I used to be more liberal. Um, but as I've been thinking about it over the years, I don't really see how you could a coherent position that doesn't have life beginning at conception. And so I think by definition, ending a life, unless it's in self-defense or in the context of a war, the word we use for that is murder. So then you can get into like, well, what should the punishment be for that? Well, how should we legally respond to that? How should we socially respond to that? Um, you could advance different ways to do it, but I think at its base level, I don't. I think you could separate the questions about whether people are going to need to use abortion or when they're going to use abortion. But I don't think you should beat. I don't think one should beat around the bush and pretending you're not ending a human life when you do it. So
okay, so why do you think that life begins at conception? Because scientifically speaking, it's literally not a life until after approximately 6 weeks after conception, which is why some women don't know that they're pregnant until after 6 weeks, which is one of the problems with this whole infamous, you know, Roe versus Wade being overturned in July, supposedly in the United States. And where I differ from other people like me who are pro-choice is that the way I kind of say it is that I think I'm kind of more honest about my position, because most of the time when people are talking about birth control or anything like that, they're talking about abortion. So I say I'm pro-abortion and other people are anti-abortion, or rather than like pro-life or anti-life or pro-choice or anti-choice or things like that. So I do think, and it, like according to most people who I hear talk about this, apparently most people agree that there's somewhere where you should draw a line, and where the fetus does qualify as a life. But for the most part, people are kind of debating what at what point it becomes a life. And that's why I think it also literally is a relevant question, that if someone is murdering someone by getting an abortion, then how is it not also murder to use a condom when you have sex, or for a woman to be on the pill, or for her
mhm.
to take the morning after pill, or for me or anyone else to masturbate, because we're all killing sperm cells and preventing pregnancies that way.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think let's okay. So like, I think obviously the minute before being born, like if you have a woman who's 6 months pregnant and you go like and you punch her in the belly, you've killed a child. It just happens to be inside a room and not outside a room, right? So I mean I mean we could get into why I don't think you could really advance an argument. Like um again, I think life begins at conception, and the reason for that is from that point forward, the natural progression is dividing of cells right up to a human being. So it's like, now that's not the case with the
But
sperm.
after conception, most pregnancies naturally abort themselves before they become a fetus. So
Well,
it's not a guarantee, even if a woman is not on any kind of birth control, that it's going to even become a life.
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. But it's again,
So
it's like,
how can life begin at conception then, if it's not guaranteed to become a life?
well, life ends all the time. Like seeds, like you look at seedlings. When I plant a seed, the correct way to do it is you put 7 seeds in there. 3 of them germinate. The strongest one survives. You pinch and kill off the other 2, and then you grow that into your seed. And now you got a tomato plant to go in your garden. Like life's the natural selection part of life. It is happening all the time. I mean, because modern humans don't encounter mortality as often as they might otherwise, but like, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's miscarriages. Sometimes it fails to implant in the womb. Sometimes, shit happens. But that's not, just because accidents happen doesn't mean you intentionally end someone's life. It's not.
But
It's not.
you're not necessarily intentionally ending someone's life if a woman gets an abortion before 6 weeks, because that is not guaranteed to have become a life.
I mean, again, people of good faith could have a discussion about where that point begins. I don't know why. What it's because of the heartbeat. Why do you pick 6 weeks? What changes at
Well,
6
I'm
weeks?
just saying. Well, that's why people disagree about abortion, because they look at it differently. See, at least in terms of that aspect in the on the topic of abortion, I just
Yeah.
look at what scientifically qualifies as a life. Like it seems like you didn't say this, but it seems like maybe um your religious way of looking at what qualifies as a life kind of trumps the scientific
Well,
definition.
dude, science.
And me, I'm not saying like I choose to look at that particular aspect of this from this angle. I'm not
Yeah.
one of
Okay.
those
Well,
like science
science.
should be the ultimate truth about everything, but
Okay, but
that's like
scientific.
scientifically speaking, it's not a life at conception.
Well, that's not true. Science, from the science perspective, when you have a self-replicating entity that is self-contained, that's the definition of alive. So the moment you have
It's
2
not
cells,
alive though.
it's
It's not
it's
alive because
it's a
it's
single-celled
not
organism,
guaranteed.
but nothing. You're
Well,
not guaranteed to live. What are
it's
you
a
talking?
life. If you're
What are you
talking about,
talking
if you're
about?
saying any single-celled organism,
Is alive?
that's why I'm saying if I jack off, I'm committing mass genocide. I'm murdering
No,
millions of sperm
no,
cells.
no, no.
You could
Okay,
also say I'm scratching my
a
nose and
sperm
committing mass
cell, a
genocide by
sperm cell.
murdering millions of
No,
single-celled organisms when
no.
I scratch my nose.
Single cells organisms have a life cycle of division and continued life. Sperm don't. Like, if you want to get
They do in the
scientific,
same way as other single-celled organisms.
no, they don't. Sperm is a specialty cell that's created for one purpose, and if it doesn't achieve that purpose, it naturally dies in regular cycles. Your body constantly generates new sperm cells and then recycles them, and it keeps doing that. That's Sperms are destined to die within, I don't know if it's 2 days or 7 days, but in a finite period of time, and they're done.
Yeah,
It's not
but
a
humans are destined to die too. We just live way longer.
Yeah. And it's called murdering a human, not when they die in front of you from quote unquote natural causes or cancer. It's called murdering them when you give them drugs or chop them into pieces and suck them through a vacuum. That would be murdering somebody. I mean, all I'm saying is scientifically, if you want to make a case that something qualitatively changes at 6 weeks or 12 weeks, I can fine, pick whatever point you want. I think once you have a self-replicating thing, that's the definition of life I want to use. If you think it's the heart, then the heart beating, then we can use that definition. Some people are saying it's when it could be survive outside the womb. So in theory, as science progresses or medicine progresses, the more and earlier a fetus can be removed from a woman and remain viable, then that would push back the day it becomes alive. I mean, you can argue about.
I think what you're getting at, that we could probably, or maybe we can't, but maybe we can probably agree about this, is that where people draw the line is kind of arbitrary, and people can disagree about where you draw
Except
the line.
Except what's not arbitrary is the moment you have a sperm and an egg that come together, it's like if you leave it alone, it has a same chance that you, Andrew, has, me, Shane, has to continue living. If you interfere with that process, that is the
It
definition
doesn't,
of murder.
though. It doesn't, though. It's not the
Does it have to
definition of murder. As we talked about, that's not guaranteed to become a life. So if you leave it alone, it's not necessarily going to become a life.
Okay.
So
Well,
it's not
okay.
it's not murder. It's not murder if you
Okay,
say,
so what's
even if it's something that's going to become a life, that's still an arbitrary line to draw, and I don't
okay?
understand why you don't
Let's
just say
let's
no one should ever masturbate, and there should be
I
no
already
condom use,
answered that.
and women
I already
should
answered
not
that.
be
I
use
already
the pill, because that's
I
just
already
as
answered that.
arbitrary, because
No, it's
it's
not, dude.
going to
Hey,
become a
pause,
life
pause,
in the same
pause,
way.
pause. I already addressed the sperm and egg thing. So do we need to go back to that question? Because sperms and a single sperm and an egg is not comparable to a self-replicating multicellular organism. Scientifically, they're different classes of things. So,
But
like,
you're stopping a baby from
okay, whoa, stop. Step by step. Step by step.
being
Step by
born
step.
in the same
You
way.
disagree?
If you use a condom, if a woman's on the pill, or if she has an
No, you're
IUD,
not.
or if she takes the morning after pill,
Okay, so
you're interfering with something that's supposedly going to become a life in the same way.
Can we please go step by step? Okay.
Yes.
Will you acknowledge a difference between a multi-celled organism, which can replicate and continue to live a lifespan, and a half cell, half chromosome egg or sperm, which cannot continue living if not fertilized? You don't see science distinguishes between them. It's a different type of cell in scientific literature. So this is a real, this biological,
So
scientific distinction.
why do you discriminate against which type of cell supposedly gets murdered? Like, why am I not murdering cells by scratching my nose? Why are those cells prioritized?
Because we have the idea of an organism. So I can use scientific language instead of using religious language. Okay. The idea of an organism is there are certain organisms it's okay to kill and certain ones there aren't. So in our society, we have all sorts of rules about how and in what circumstances you can kill animals. So it's okay to poison a rat. Okay. It's okay to hunt a deer, but it's not okay to burn a dog alive. Okay. So we have sets of rules about how we're allowed to treat different types of organisms in different situations. Like
Yeah, but society as a whole does not agree about whether about whether abortion qualifies as murder, and whether
I'm
it's
not saying it does.
okay to do that or not.
Okay. So is it murder for you personally? Okay. 1 month before pregnancy, the baby's in the womb. If a doctor goes in there and cuts it up with scissors and then sucks it out with a vacuum, is that killing a life to you or not?
Yeah.
Okay. So again,
So the difference though is that, why the fuck is it up to me? Like it's not that it's in the woman's body. It's not something a fetus being in a woman's body is very different from a child who has been born and is walking around. Like, if a kid is born and walking around, or no matter what age they are, they're not inside the woman. I've heard some philosophers say that on the most extreme pro-choice or pro-abortion argument, or whatever you would call it, that what gives the fetus the right to grow in the woman's womb in the first place? How do you not how come you don't view that as a hostile invader? Like, the people disagree about this because it depends on whether you prioritize the life of the woman or the life of the fetus. You have to choose one or the other. And the people who are like so-called pro-choice think that it should be the woman's choice because this person is growing in their body. Maybe they can't financially support this. Maybe they would die. Maybe they would die if the child is born. Maybe they're a crack addict and they're homeless and they don't want their baby to be born as a crack addict. Like I don't understand why it's up to anyone other than the woman and her significant other, that if she has one, whether this happens. Even if I agree, for the sake of argument, that life begins at conception, I don't know why it's any of my fucking business.
Well, okay, if somebody lets their toddler starve in their house, is it society's business or not?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
If a parent lets their 2-year-old starve to death in their house, is it society's business or is it just the family's business, in your opinion? What kind of society would you want? Which one would you vote for?
It's society's business, because that's parental neglect.
Okay. So again, it's at which so in our society, traditionally, and this is now potentially changing with all the kind of revolutionary thinking that's going on. Traditionally, we extend rights to individual humans. So at some point, that baby becomes an individual human, and then society, the same way it defends my rights in certain contexts, it defends your rights. It advocates that baby is entitled to be treated in a certain way. And so again, you could argue when that begins.
Okay, so depending on the way you look at this, you could say the mother is murdering the baby by getting an abortion, or in some cases, literally the baby murders the mother by being born, because the mother would die if the baby is born. And like, to me, that's the clearest example of whether you prioritize the life of the mother or the child. And why is it up to you or me to make that decision, whether the mother's life or the child's life matters more, when it's her who's going to have to take care of the child if it's born, and her significant other if she has one.
She can give it up for adoption. So that's not true. She doesn't necessarily have any obligation.
Not everyone can give up their child for adoption, and like, some people will die. So some people will die if they give birth to their child. A child could be born with fetal alcohol syndrome, or they could be born addicted to crack if their mother is a homeless alcoholic or a homeless crack addict or something like this. Maybe she was raped. Should she have to carry that child to term? A child of rape? Like that. There are so many cases like this that's why I don't see why it's this is why I'm a small L libertarian about this. It's not my fucking business. I'm for the right of the individual in this case. The individual.
You're not for the rights of the baby. Again, if you consider it a human
baby
being,
doesn't have rights. A baby doesn't have rights. It's not a human being.
Have rights. So I'm allowed to kill a 1-year-old.
Does. A 1-year-old is not as a 1-year-old is already gone way past the point of whether they're get aborted or not.
Well, the thing is, if you're not going to be if you want to have like a sensical response to it, you have to stick to some definition. So if it's alive at some point, then it's an alive human being. So again, we're back to where we started.
Yeah, that's why I said it depends on whether you prioritize the life of the mother or the life of the fetus. And so you're saying this human being who has been living her entire life, you get to restrict her rights because she's apparently going to restrict the rights that do not exist yet of a human being who is not a human being yet, and therefore by definition does not have rights yet.
You're contradicting yourself. You said it was alive at some point during the pregnancy. So are you now changing your position? Because if it's alive, even if it's alive, why do the rights of a fetus trump the life of a woman who has been going around her entire life? It's a human being.
Because you have to restrict her rights in order for that to happen. There's no way around that. You have to restrict her rights in order to force her to not get an abortion. You have to restrict the woman's rights for that. That's why it's a libertarian thing to be pro-choice.
No, it's not necessarily.
It is.
No, it's not, because you can't be a libertarian.
You want the state to interfere with the rights of the woman. That you can't. You have to admit that if you're so-called pro-life.
Unless can you believe in a police force and rule of law and be a libertarian or not?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you declare at, say,
I'm not saying
5 months,
I'm a libertarian, by the way. I'm saying I have a libertarian position on this issue.
Instead of talking about 30 things at once, I'm trying to go step by step. If you declare,
Okay.
whether it's 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, whatever point you declare it to be a living human, then within our legal framework, within our moralistic framework, it has consideration. The mother has consideration. The same way, that's just the way
How
our
does the
system
mother
works.
have consideration? Where are you giving the mother consideration?
The fact that if the mother would request support, as in the forms of assistance giving birth, or if she needs food, we provide her social goods. If she needs to have support dealing with the emotions, or she's in an abusive relationship,
I thought you were conservative. You're for the state taking care of a woman.
It doesn't have to be the state doing it. A church could do it. An NGO can do it. A
A
charity
church
can do
isn't gonna do it. A church
They
isn't.
used to do it all the time.
Yeah, but they don't anymore. They don't.
Well, the reason
They
they don't
don't.
is because
Private businesses and companies and churches don't take care of women who have
Well,
children
that's
out of wedlock. So you have to grow the welfare state, which conservatives tend to not like, in order to take care of this woman who has a child because she was not allowed to get an abortion because you restricted her rights with the power of the state.
Okay, so before the government portion of the economy and the tax rate, whether it's up by 300% or 600%, I'm not exactly sure how much it is, but it's multiplied by some number between 3 and 8 times since when we used to actually have non-government social bodies. So
what number are you talking about? Sorry.
Back in the 1920s, the tax rate was maybe 1/10 what it is now. The size of the government was about 1/20th. So back in those days, when the government wasn't reaching into everybody's pocket, then there were other organizations, church hospitals, there were social
You're
clubs.
applying a causation where there's actually just correlation.
No, I'm just saying the support offered to the mother doesn't have to be offered by the government.
I'm not saying it does, but it's like empirically, it's a better and more workable choice. If you don't get the government to do that, then anytime in recent decades, it's not going to happen.
Okay, well, be that as it may, what we were talking about is the fact that in our society,
so if you can't do it unless the government wants to do it, and you don't want that unless the government does it, and you don't want the government to do it, then this woman is fucked if she has that child.
Andrew, my solution is this simple: cut the government tax income by 50%, give all that money back to the people, and let them know if you want to have
the people. Which people?
Every taxpayer, take every tax bill, divide it in half.
So people who are too poor to pay taxes, people who are the most likely to be impacted by not being allowed to get an abortion, would be those most affected by this.
What do you don't have a right to kill.
They would not get money from return taxes because they're too poor to pay taxes, and most people who get abortions are poor. So you're going to hurt more people who are more likely to get abortions. And take away some money that would go to them, and you're going to give money to people who don't need it.
You're dancing around too much, man. Like
you're dancing around too much. Your positions don't make sense, man.
You're literally raising 30 points at once. Like we haven't decided when life will live. We were talking about the competing freedoms of the unborn child and the mother. Then we were talking about who funds social programs. Then we're talking about who benefits from tax refunds. It's like you can't have seven.
I'm addressing points that you bring up, dude.
Well, I'm trying to bring it back to the original point. So it's like, again, we can't, we have to make it some effort to resolve the things we're talking about, or it's just going to spiral into the point where we're just kind of rafting back and forth. And I mean, if that's what you want to do, fair enough. We can do that.
I told you earlier, even if we agree for the sake of argument that life begins at conception, I'm still pro-abortion.
Okay, great. But you also said you don't understand how people could do could hold any other views, and I'm trying to lay out what I think is a fairly coherent argument as to why you extend rights to things you deem to be living humans. That's like a basic premise of the Declaration of Independence. It's a basic premise of, to whatever extent our society is Christian, it's a basic premise of human rights, is the idea that anything you decide is a living human gets a set of rights. So
if you think abortion is murder, though, then you have to decide. Then you have to say the government gets the right to decide whether to murder the mother or the child. The government should not get the right to decide whether you murder the mother or the child.
I wouldn't necessarily involve the government. I would leave it to the individual.
It's not up to the individual by definition if abortion is outlawed. If abortion is illegal, then it's literally not up to the individual. If abortion is 100% legal and available, that's the only way that it's up to the individual.
I mean, there aren't any jurisdictions actually considering making abortion fully. I mean, yes, maybe some states.
In the states, yeah, in at least several different states, it's going to be 100% illegal as soon as Roe versus Wade is repealed.
I have to drive 3 hours to get my abortion.
Are you fucking kidding me? Most people who get abortions cannot afford to drive to a different state to get an abortion.
Well, they could afford to have sperm injected into their uterus.
Women are going to be charged with homicide if they try, and as we know throughout history, if women can't get legal access to abortions, they're going to go get illegal abortions in back alleyways or try to do it themselves with coat hangers and kill themselves and the baby.
And society might have,
and you'll have by your definition, two dead people instead of one.
And society might have to move towards a less risky sexual behavior. If killing human beings is now off the table as a form of contraception,
that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
It's happened in the past.
It's not going to. How's it going to happen now?
Then, unfortunately, some people will suffer.
Tell me how that's going to happen. So you're okay with women being charged for homicide for getting abortions, then? You're okay with the government taking away women's rights because they get abortions?
I don't know whether it's right away or 6 weeks or 2 months, but at some point, yes, 100% it's murder. I've seen my own child.
So you're okay with with growing the government and the government being able to take women's rights away? That's what you're saying. You want the government to grow and there to be more laws and women to be convicted of homicide for getting abortions.
Murder is one of the big 10, dude. It's killing human beings has been like that's a very old law. That's like.
But you realize that obviously, like we said at the beginning, not everyone says that's murder. And even if it is murder, you're saying that it's better to murder the woman than it is to murder the child. No. And you're okay with the state taking away her rights.
No,
nobody
has a right.
If you're creating a new law, then she had the right to get abortion. If abortion becomes illegal, you're creating a new law, taking away a right that she had by definition.
One of the 10 Commandments. Murder is one of the 10 Commandments.
I don't care. It's legally not murder right now. You're okay with murdering the woman, though. You're okay with murder.
Nobody's murdering a woman. When did I advocate murdering women?
Like I said earlier, if you have to choose between the life of the mother and the child, you would rather kill the mother.
I would not. I never said anything remotely close to that. That's completely made up.
You're against abortion. You would have to kill. You would have to, by your own definition, kill the child if you have to choose between the life of the mother and the child.
I never said that. If you're in a medical emergency and you have
which would you choose
between saving the mother, and saving the child? I choose saving the mother. That's completely different than going into a clinic where they go inside your womb, chop up a baby, and vacuum it out.
No, it's not. No woman's that's fucking inconsistent right there. That's the definition of inconsistent. If you're against abortion, but you have to choose between the life of the mother and the child, and you would choose the life of the mother, that's inconsistent.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Regular abortion. Mother's wife is
you're
not
murdering a baby.
Andrew,
By your own
if you're not-
definition. You're choosing to
Andrew,
kill a baby. You're choosing to murder. Why are you choosing to kill a baby and murder if you have to choose between the life of a mother and the child, and you choose to save the woman and murder the child by your own definition?
We're not on CNN here. Like, are you auditioning for something? I don't understand what's happening. Like, is there an audience that you're trying to impress right now?
Because you're trying to claim that I'm being inconsistent, but everything you say is inconsistent, dude.
No, you're talking over me and getting very agitated, and I'm having no opportunity to actually ground the conversation in something that we can nibble on. So what's happening is I try to get half a point out, you rant. I try to bring us back to talk about something, you rant, and that cycles keep repeating till it's more and more just you ranting. So I'll ask
you
again.
Keep going back to the same points, and then I address that point, and then you go back to the same point.
Okay, so here I'll address the latest point you made. Okay, woman in car accident gets hurt. She is pregnant. Doctor says, now, because of this car accident, we have a choice to make, father and family. Do I prioritize the life of saving the woman or saving the kid as a result of this medical emergency? That is situation one. Situation is two. Healthy woman walks into clinic, says, please stick blades into my womb and chop up my baby and suck it out.
No woman who gets an abortion ever said that in their entire fucking life.
Well, those are the two scenarios, brother. They're not the same.
Find me a single woman who wants to get an abortion who looks at it that way in the history of the fucking world.
Okay, that's not what those are the two scenarios. Okay.
You see how you're setting up these two scenarios in a completely biased way?
Yeah, you're right. I am saying it in a very dramatic way, but that is what happens. Okay, so comparing scenario, woman walking into an abortion.
That's not how an abortion happens, dude. They don't go in there and chop it up. What are you fucking talking about?
You should do some research, man. At 5 months.
Yeah, so you do. That's not how abortions happen.
Okay, if you want to see this, 3-month abortion. How is it preformed? I figured you had no fucking idea what you're talking about.
You have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
That's how they do it, man. You know how big it is?
They go into women's vaginas with scissors and chop up the fetus. That's not how a fucking abortion happens.
Yes, it is, man.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay. Okay, if you're in the first trimester, you'll likely have a vacuum aspiration. So they just suck it out. If you're in the second trimester, meaning it's been more than 13 weeks, you'll have a dilation and evacuation in DE, dilation and extraction. Okay, they don't extract it in one piece. Okay, and it's too big to go at 14 weeks. It's too big to go through that tube.
What are you referencing here? What are you referencing here?
WebMD.
Okay.
Okay. Dude, at 14 weeks, it's too big for the little tube to suck it all up. They have to physically go in there and make it the size that can fit through the tube. That's what they do at 14 weeks onward. And the way they do that is by using edges that are able to make the thing smaller. Okay? Yes, I'm making it sound more grotesque.
Now you're quoting yourself here. You're not quoting WebMD
I put it
anymore.
in the private chat, man. But you really want to double down on this when you could be 100% wrong? You sure?
I don't care. I don't care.
Well, it's obvious you don't care, Andrew, because you're not. You know, I'm big surprise. You don't care. You don't know what you're talking about.
You don't care about taking the rights away from women, and you're okay with murdering babies in the right circumstances. You just don't want to murder babies if the woman and her significant other, if she has one, decides to do that by your own definition, because that's how you look at it, by murdering babies.
I suspect perhaps it might be not an abstract concept for you, and you might have some own personal attachment to this. So I hope.
Is it an abstract concept for you? Why is?
Well, I like, even for you. I feel like I'm on CNN, and like the only either this is super emotional and you can't control yourself, or you're trying to impress somebody because you're not having a fair conversation.
I just think your opinions on this are fucking ridiculous and they don't make sense to me.
Well, okay, because you're not listening and you don't understand them, I would put forward.
No, you keep saying that, and I keep addressing something you say, and then you go back to the same
Okay.
point.
So you do not see a difference between a woman in a car accident causing them needing to prioritize saving her as a result of a car accident as a different situation than walking into an abortion clinic and requesting an abortion. That's the same situation to you. There's no qualitative difference in the two. Because that's what I'm talking about.
I'm saying in both cases, you're saying you have the right to decide whose life gets saved.
But that's what we do as
Why
a society.
do you have the right to make that decision?
That's what human beings do. We always that's literally what we do as a society.
Human beings as a society decide who gets to live or die in the
Yes,
cases of
we
car
decide who gets
accidents and
who.
complicated
We
pregnancies all the
triage
time, like
How do
every
you think the
human
healthcare
being.
system works? They triage stuff when we have organs.
So
We
you're
don't
gonna
have
go and help the cops and analyze car accidents and decide whether the woman or the child gets to die every time a woman gets into a car accident. If we're making a direct comparison here, we would say you go in with the woman and you decide that she does not get to get an abortion, or she does get to get an abortion, and then also you go to the hospital whenever a pregnant woman is in a car crash, and you get to decide whether the baby or the mother lives or die. That's a direct
my
comparison. You
position.
have the right to make that decision. Apparently, you have the right to
No,
decide who lives and
that's
dies.
okay. The reason I made the
You're playing
distinction.
God. You're playing God.
No,
You're saying
Andrew.
it's not playing
No.
God, but that's
Okay,
playing God.
you've had your turn. Okay. The reason I distinguish between the two scenarios is because taking a proactive action to end a life is the crime we call murder. Okay. So as a result of an accident, if you need to prioritize saving one life over another, that is different than in a situation where you actively end a life. They're two different situations.
So
Okay.
then,
There are
you're inconsistent because you're saying it's okay for a woman to get an abortion in
No,
some
it's not an
cases.
abortion. That's not an abortion. An abortion is when you intentionally end the life of a child inside a
And
womb. If there's
And
a,
you
if
said
there's
if there's a complication late in pregnancy and you have to choose between the life of the mother and the life of the child, you said you would choose the
no,
life of the mother. That by definition means an
no,
abortion.
no, it does
Yes.
not. It doesn't mean you
Yes,
have
it
to
does.
it doesn't mean you have to proactively end the life of the child. It means you prioritize the life of the woman first. And if the child can survive at the same time, then great. As a result of the car accidents, a mother who's now in a car accident or woman who has some complication,
You're dancing around this,
here's what we're
dude.
gonna
You're
do. Here's what we're
dancing
gonna do.
around this. That's
No, it's
bullshit.
not dancing
That's
around it.
bullshit. That's
If
an abortion.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. If
Okay,
there's a complication late in pregnancy and you have to end a pregnancy because the woman would die if she carries through the pregnancy, that is an abortion.
no.
Or you're
People
okay with abortions
No,
in
dude.
some rare cases.
No, I'm not,
Either
dude.
you're okay with
Every time a
abortions
person falls off a building, it's suicide.
in some rare cases, or you have an
No,
inconsistent definition of
no.
what an abortion
Here's the
is.
difference. Here's the difference, Andrew. Okay. Here's the difference. Okay. Scenario one: the woman's life is not under threat. We're going to kill the baby now. Situation two: if to save the woman's life, okay, we're going to have to increase the chances of the baby dying up into it being
It's still killing
certain.
the baby. It's still
No,
killing the
it's
baby. Yes.
so. For
There are
instance,
many situations where it's still killing the baby.
if you can justify the reason why you had to do that was to save the mother's life, there's a big difference between them saying why did the baby end up dead, because that was the only way to save this woman's life. Then we could go, you know what, maybe that was a good decision. Okay,
Okay,
but
so you're saying it's sometimes a good decision to get an abortion.
it's sometimes our actions kill people. Okay. When you do it for no reason or for a bad reason, we call that murder. Okay, or we call it manslaughter.
Okay, you're
When
okay
you
with
kill,
murdering babies according to
no,
your own
when you
definition
kill, when you
sometimes.
have to,
If it saves the life of a mother, you're okay with murdering babies.
I'm not for shooting people, Andrew. But if somebody's having a psychotic break and picks up a knife and starts stabbing people, I would shoot that person. Okay?
Yeah, so
So there
by
are,
definition, in that example, you're okay with murder. And
that's not murder,
but you're
Andrew.
not
That's not what
admitting
the
that in
word
this
murder
parallel
means.
case, it's also
That's
murder.
not what murder means.
Yes,
Murder
it
is
is. Killing
no,
a life, according to your own definition,
no.
ending a life is murder. If you end
Ending,
the life of someone who's shooting you in self-defense, that's
that's
murder.
not murder.
If you
That's not
choose
murder.
between,
That's not
it's
murder.
not murder.
That's not murder. No.
Okay, so
Killing somebody,
abortion through self-defense. So you're committing an so you're ending the life of a child through self-defense, and in this case,
yes,
abortion is
that
not
you could
murder.
make,
So
you could make, you
you
could
either
make
have
a
an
moral,
inconsistent
yes,
either you
that would
have an
be,
inconsistent definition,
no,
or you're okay with abortion in some cases. It's
it's
one
not.
or the other. You
Okay,
can't get around
you're
that.
using abortion as a fudge word. What abortion means
So are
is a
you. You don't have a consistent
abortion.
definition. You don't have a consistent
Abortion.
definition.
Abortion is a medical procedure entered into for the voluntary ending of a pregnancy. That's what an abortion is. Okay? Abortion is the
Yes,
voluntary
you're
ending of a
voluntarily
pregnancy.
ending a pregnancy if you choose
No.
between the
If
life of
there's a
a mother
medical
and a child,
complication,
and you end the life of a child. You're just
no,
not admitting
Andrew,
that that's abortion, or you
no,
have an inconsistent definition.
no, Andrew. If there's a
Yes.
medical emergency and the situation is forced on the parents and the doctor, because this is the way the situation happens if you actually look at the context.
So
Hey
sometimes
guys,
women have to get abortions.
that's not an abortion.
It
That's a
is.
medical. No, it's not, Andrew.
It is. It is in
Fine.
the same way you're
That's fine.
defining it.
That's the type of abortion that's okay. The type of abortion that I would not consider an abortion
Okay.
is one where there is a genuine medical emergency that requires prioritizing the life of the mother. I think there's a
Okay.
meaningful distinction between that and walking into a clinic and them saying, "Wow, you're wholly
But
3
they're
months
both
healthy and pregnant. Would you
But
like
they're
to
both
terminate this now?"
abortions. By your own definition, they're
No,
both
they're not. By
killing
your
babies.
definition.
So in
By
some
my
cases you're okay with killing babies, and in some cases you're okay with not killing babies. It's up to you to decide, apparently, or up to the government to decide.
guess, okay, Andrew, in a war, people die. Because we engage in certain industries, people die. Because we choose to use cars, people die. All sorts of things we do can end up killing people. Okay? That's that's something that's a consequence of going after something else. Abortion is only going after one thing, which is the death of the child. That's why murder is when
you're murdering the child according to your own
the word
definition.
the
If
word
you
kill
choose
word
the life of the mother, if you have to choose between the life of the mother and the child,
do you
because there's
understand the
late
difference?
term complications in the
Do you understand
pregnancy,
the difference between
according to your
manslaughter
own
and murder?
definition.
Do you understand the
According to
difference
your
between
own
manslaughter and
definition,
murder?
there's still.
Do you
Oh, so
understand the
you're
difference
okay
between
with
manslaughter and murder?
manslaughter but not murder? Is that what you're saying?
Do you
You're
understand the
so
difference
now
between
you're
manslaughter and
so now you're
murder, and that
shifting the
they're both killing?
goalpost to saying that you're okay with
Do you
manslaughter but
understand the
not
difference
murder,
between
as long
manslaughter and
as
murder?
you make the decision.
Do you understand the difference between manslaughter and murder, but they're both killing? Do you
Yeah, but
understand it?
apparently you don't
Okay.
understand
So
what murder is, or you
there's two
don't understand what
there's two
abortion
forms of,
is,
there's
or
two
you don't
forms
understand what manslaughter is, or you don't understand what all three of them are.
I wish you all the best, man. I wish you all the best getting to because you're so sure you're right. You're so sure you know everything. You're just so emotionally and passionate.
I'm not sure I know everything.
That's
I'm
the
not sure I
absolute
know
prop.
everything. I'm
The way you're
not trying to get you to agree with me. I just don't I don't see how this position makes sense.
obviously not. But and your way about going to see that is to talk over me, not let me build an argument together. Tell me what I think. I don't know what to do with you. I don't know what to tell you, man.
Because I don't understand how you can deny me when I catch you in logical inconsistencies in your positions. You're never admitting that they're logical inconsistencies.
This question: killing a life can take the form of murder and of manslaughter. Killing a baby can take the form of an abortion and a complication because of some other factor. Could you understand?
That's an abortion. That's an abortion.
Can you please?
You're either okay with abortions in some cases as long as you or the government gets to decide, and you're saying that you should get to define that. How are you not saying that? How are you not saying that?
Because I'm applying the same laws that existed before abortion was even a procedure, Andrew. Okay.
So you're talking about laws that are not laws right now. So you want the government to change laws and take away women's rights that they already have by creating more laws.
I'm not saying that. Stop telling me what I'm saying. This is why I don't know.
How are you not saying that?
Geez, that might be a question you would ask before telling me I'm saying that. You think if we were having an honest conversation here,
because you keep trying to explain that and then you deny it. So how is that not true?
Because these are the laws in 1900. You end a human life intentionally, we call it murder.
That's not 1900.
Okay, but you're saying I'm changing the law. The change in the law was this little brief period in all human history, this little 40-year blip where you were allowed to voluntarily end a pregnancy. I'm not changing a law.
Women,
okay?
You are by definition changing the law if you want to go back to the way the laws were in 1900. That is changing the law and by definition creating a new law because it's not a law anymore and taking away a woman's legal right to an abortion that she legally has now, and you're taking away that legal right by making something that was legal illegal. How is that not the case?
Okay. You're right. I'm reverting the law or I'm changing the law. I will concede that language, no problem whatsoever. Okay. But it's the point I'm trying to make, though, about being consistent is, okay, I've had the same definition of murder the entire time, which is intentionally ending a life. Okay. If people will die as a result
of intentionally ending a baby's life, if you choose between the life of the mother and the child when there are late-term pregnancy complications, according to your own definition, it's murder.
Okay, but here's what I've been trying to say to you. The distinction is why you're doing it, Andrew. If you're doing it explicitly to save the woman's life, that's the same as the distinction between murder, manslaughter, accident, suicide. These are all situations where somebody ends up dead. Okay,
but you said that abortion is murder, and murder is killing babies. So according to your own definition, you're okay with killing babies in some circumstances as long as you make the decision, rather than the woman and her significant other if she has.
You're saying every time a baby dies. See, look, the abortion. Here's the definition of abortion. Okay, if we could take such a backwater definition as Oxford. Okay, here's. Okay, the deliberate termination of a human pregnancy. Okay, that's not.
Does it say murder? Does it say murder? That's not murder.
Okay, I consider the deliberate killing of. Okay, so let's follow step by step. I think it's a human being at some point in the pregnancy. Okay, like we said at the beginning, maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 6 months. It's certainly a week before it's born. At some point in there, it's a human being. Abortion is the deliberate termination of a human pregnancy. Whatever point,
but you said it's murder. And you're making these subtle distinctions when it serves your own goals, like this distinction between abortion, manslaughter, and murder. Yet apparently, according to the definition that you just read, that does not say murder anywhere. Apparently, that supports your argument that it's murder, even though it literally does not say murder.
It depends. Here's the depth here. Like, Andrew, I'm not being disingenuous here. Like it's not super complicated, man. If you want to just keep trying to do gotchas, okay, then you could look.
You're right. It's not super complicated. You're okay with killing babies as long as it's you're okay with killing babies as long as it saves the life of a mother, according to your own definition.
Yes, and I'm okay killing terrorists if it saves the life of people on a plane, and I'm okay killing people shooting up schools.
That's why I've been getting so pissed off, because you won't say that you're okay with killing babies in some circumstances, because you kept saying no every time I said that.
Because the goal is not to kill the baby.
But that's what happens. So you're okay with killing babies in some circumstances. If you're okay with killing the baby to save the life of the mother, then how is that not inconsistent? Because if you're so-called pro-life, then how are you ever okay with killing a baby, no matter what the circumstances are?
Because the thing is, you don't you do whatever you have to do to save the mother, but you don't have to intentionally kill the baby. You might subject the baby to greater risk to save the mother, but
sometimes you do have to intentionally kill the baby, which you just said a few minutes ago.
If that is a actual situation, I don't know if that situation exists. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not saying that flippantly. Okay, if there's actually ever been a situation where it's literally this black or white thing, where it's like either I have to stab and kill the baby, and somehow that's going to save the mother. Maybe you have to do an immediate C-section. I don't know. Okay, all I'm saying is there's a big distinction, okay, between an abortion, which is deliberately terminating a pregnancy for that being the sole goal, and if for other medical or emergency reasons the baby might die while you're saving the mother. Those are two very different situations. They're very different. Because one situation you're trying to save a life.
Why do you care about the motivation only in that case?
It's in every case. That's how our legal system works. That's how our morale system works.
You care about the motivations inconsistently, and you draw the line arbitrarily. Like I was saying. If you're saying it depends on the motivation, then how come the motivations don't matter if I masturbate and kill 1 million sperm cells, or if I have sex with a woman with a condom, or wears an IUD, or takes the morning after pill, then you are intentionally ending what is going to be a life in the same way that you are if you are getting an abortion.
No, Andrew, we already talked about that, Andrew. We already settled that like 4 times.
We didn't settle that. No.
There's a scientific distinction in biology between what's called a sex cell and what's called a living organism. If you need, I can go back. If you want me to Google science.com, I'll find you the definitions. If you don't believe me, if I'm not an addict, but there's a true scientific definition between a sex cell as a type of cell and a type of thing, which is very different than a organism which can continue on. They are different. That's the reason I treat them differently, because they're different. Okay,
So how come you go with a scientific argument there, but your fundamental argument is a religious one?
Because I'm talking to you, so I want to speak a language we both speak. In religious terms, I believe that life begins when you have a viable living human. That would be an egg and a sperm. Boom. That's when life is conceived, is conception, is the creation of life. I do not believe individual sperms are human beings, because they're not. I respect human beings. To me, a human being has the same number of chromosomes as me. It has a full set of DNA. That's what a fertilized egg is. A single egg by itself or a sperm by itself is not a human being. It's not even close. From a religious standpoint, scientific standpoint,
it's just as close as a sperm cell mixing with an egg at conception, because that's not guaranteed to be a human, in the same way that if I jack off, it's not guaranteed to make a human, and if I have sex with a woman with a condom, it's not guaranteed to make a human, or if any man has sex with any woman with an IUD, it's not guaranteed to make a human, or the same case if she's on the birth control pill or takes the morning after pill. I don't see how this line is not arbitrary.
because you fertilize egg, you can actually see it under a microscope. You can actually put it under a fucking microscope and you can see there's an egg, there's a sperm. If they're separate, we don't got a problem. You put them together, that's the non-arbitrary distinction. They have come together.
That's arbitrary because it's not guaranteed to become a life.
No, it's not arbitrary. Arbitrary means there's no logic.
It is arbitrary. It is arbitrary. It's not guaranteed to become a life. That is what it means.
Nobody's guaranteed to be alive in the future, Andrew. That's equally true of the egg as it is of you, as it is of any living thing.
Like we talked about before, and you admitted most of the time when an egg mixes with the sperm, it naturally aborts itself.
That doesn't mean it's morally okay.
That's why it's arbitrary.
Okay, here's the thing, dude. Even if
you're making a moral argument, that's further evidence that it's arbitrary.
It's the reason it's not. Just because it has a low chance of survival doesn't mean you're allowed to kill it. That's not arbitrary.
You're not killing anything. It's not a life yet. When a sperm mixes with an egg, it is not a life yet.
You're not the definition of life.
Your own definition was that it is going to become a life. You said that
Andrew.
You're ending something that is going to become a life, but you just said too that it's unlikely to become a life. That's why it's arbitrary.
You caught me misspeaking. It is 100% alive once you have a fertilized egg.
It's not.
Okay. So it's scientific definition.
No. Sorry. If it's been fertilized, I'm talking about when a sperm mixes with an egg, like you were talking about a few seconds ago. When a sperm mixes with an egg, like you were saying a few minutes ago, that's not going to necessarily become a life, which is why I was saying it's arbitrary. Because if it's not guaranteed to become a life, that's why it's arbitrary. It's not arbitrary if it literally actually is, like, I don't know, a scientific definition of life, or even like going like extreme, like you were saying, like an 8-month pregnant woman, that could be a life, but that's not arbitrary.
My personal opinion of what I think the law should be is, I think it should be, I don't know if it's 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I think it should be left to the woman and a doctor. I think there should be, at some point, I don't know if it's 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks. I think there should definitely be a point by which everybody has to consider it a life, whether they like it or not. That's personally what I think is the most pragmatic win-win for everybody, would be some system like that. All of that said, as long as we have a point, you consider it alive. Okay, so I happen to believe to consider it alive at conception. People in good faith, some people could say 6 weeks, some people could say 2 weeks. It doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, advance what argument you want. Like if you're saying it's arbitrary because it's too likely to die, then I guess by that logic, it would be non-arbitrary to call it alive once it's maybe implanted in the uterus, and then its chance of dying is down to like 5 or 10%. Then maybe at that point it would be non-arbitrary for you. So whatever that point is, that's the point where we're right back into all the shit we've been yelling at each other about for the last hour, which is what you do with it.
So far, it seems like you've actually conceded what I've been getting so pissed off about. It seems like you've conceded that it is murder, and you're okay with killing babies in some circumstances if you have to choose between the life of the mother and the baby. And it seems like you also just conceded that it's arbitrary to draw the line at the point where the egg mixes with the sperm, because it's unlikely. You just said that it's non-arbitrary for it to be qualified as a life, when it's more viable, like it's only a 5 or 10% chance of not being born.
By your logic, that would be non-arbitrary. My point is when the egg is fertilized. Your non-arbitrary point is at 6 weeks. I was saying, for pragmatic purposes, we can negotiate when that point is. Okay? But What I am saying is my definition of abortion, the one I got from WebMD or wherever the hell it was, is the deliberate termination of a human pregnancy. My definition of
But
murder
that's not what
is
you. That's
let
not
me
what your.
finish.
That's not what your
Let me
original
finish.
definition
Let
was,
me
though.
finish. Let me finish. Okay. They call it an abortion clinic. You go to an abortion clinic to get an abortion. If you're in an emergency room, that's to me a meaningful distinction. I'm not going to argue it anymore. If you don't see the distinction,
Okay,
between,
but is that killing a baby or not? Because you said it wasn't for a long time, which was getting me pissed off, and then you admitted that it is still killing babies, but you're okay with that in some circumstances, and now you're going back on that, just like how you went back on whether it's arbitrary where you're drawing the line. You are drawing the line in an arbitrary place, dude.
No.
Like if it's unlikely to become a life, then that's arbitrary. That's just as arbitrary as saying masturbation is mass genocide. If it's unlikely to become a life.
No, Andrew.
Yeah.
I'll try to.
If an egg mixes with a sperm and it's unlikely to become a life, that's just as arbitrary as saying that you're committing mass murder when you masturbate.
No.
Yes.
I don't know how many times
in
I have to
both
tell
cases,
you.
It's unlikely to lead to a life. In both cases, it's unlikely to lead to a life.
I don't think that's not the standard I'm using. The likelihood of survival is not part of my framework. I don't think of that as a relevant variable. You do, which is fine, but that's your variable. I consider viability. When you have a fertilized egg, you have a full chromosome, self-replicating human entity. That's my non-arbitrary standpoint. You're the one who thinks it's arbitrary.
But that's not what you said before. That's not what you said before. You said at conception. At the start of this
chat. That's what conception is, you muppets. That's what conception is.
That's not conception. That's not conception. That's not conception. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not. No. Life begins after conception, dude.
Oh my. What is conception, Andrew?
When the sperm meets the egg, like you said.
But that's what I guess is their life to begin. What are you even talking about? Dude, okay.
Life does not begin at conception.
Okay, man.
Like you looked this up and it showed scientifically. Life does not begin at conception. You've said at least twice that when a sperm mixes with an egg, it's unlikely to become a life. If you're saying that something that is unlikely to become a life is where the line should be drawn, then that is by definition an arbitrary line.
Here's Encyclopedia Britannica, okay? Their definition of life doesn't involve the viability thing you're talking about at all, okay? So it doesn't say...
So now you're using a third definition?
This is the definition of life, the only one I've used, the only one I've pulled up.
No, you've used about 3 or 4 different definitions of life. You've said it's at conception. You've said it when the sperm meets the eggs. You've said when it's going to be a viable life. And now you're using another definition.
They're all completely consistent, Andrew.
No, they're not. That's 4 different definitions.
That are all consistent, Andrew. A chair
no, they're not.
Here's the definition of a chair, Andrew. Here's the definition of a chair. Something you sit on.
4 different definitions are by definition not consistent. You can't use multiple different definitions and say they're consistent.
Here's the definition of a chair, Andrew. Something that has something with 4 wooden legs and a flat surface on top. Here's another definition of a chair. A rock on a ground. Here's another definition of a chair. A big plastic ball filled with little bean pellets. Those are all definitions of the chair.
You're using 4 different definitions. That's by definition an arbitrary line to draw it at.
Because they're all things you sit on, Andrew. Okay? So just because the exact definition of the chair changes,
you can use 4 different definitions there. Yet when I ask you if you have to use you're being inconsistent. You're using 4 different definitions, and then you are. And then when I ask you if it's killing babies, if you have to choose between the life of a mother and a child, and you choose to kill the baby to save the mother that's apparently not killing babies, even though at one point in this conversation you admitted that it is killing babies and that you should just be the one who gets to decide. So like you're either you're changing your definitions, or you're changing where you draw the line, or you're not admitting that where you draw the line is what it is, or you're saying it's non-arbitrary, and then you're talking about a different point in pregnancy and saying that's not arbitrary. I don't even know what you're talking about anymore.
So the definition of life I have here, life is defined as any system.
What's your definition? You've given me 4 definitions.
I'm going to walk you through all 3 of them and tell you how they're all completely consistent and none of them contradict each other. They're all just approaching the thing from a different angle.
Oh my God.
Hey, dude.
Okay, go ahead.
Life is defined as any system capable of performing functions such as eating, metabolizing, excreting, breathing, moving, growing, reproducing, and responding to external stimuli. Okay, life's something very hard to define. Okay, but this system capable of these functions begins at conception.
Life is very hard to define.
Yes, it is. It's very hard to define.
But that's not conception. Your definition that you did there
the point in time.
Is by definition very different from conception.
This definition starts for human beings at conception. That's what I'm saying, Andrew.
That's completely different from the definition you just used.
Okay. At conception.
But you said they're the same.
At when a sperm enters an egg, the act of conception occurs where life is now able to begin being a system capable of performing functions such as eating, metabolism. I literally just combined them all in a sentence.
That by definition is not conception. That by definition is not conception because it's unlikely to become that which is capable. Like you said, it's unlikely. Like you said, it's unlikely to become viable. So it's unlikely to meet the definition of life that you just said. Yet you're drawing the line there, and it's arbitrary. But you're saying it's not arbitrary.
I don't have probability in my definition. So again, I've just shown you that my definitions of life aren't inconsistent. Then you move on to this arbitrary thing.
Yes, they are. They're completely different. You're saying that if it's going to be a viable life, but then you drew the line yourself earlier than that, when it's unlikely to become a viable life.
Something with the 1%
and you say it's not arbitrary, yet it is arbitrary.
Andrew, something with a 1 in 100 chance of survival is still viable, buddy. I'm sorry, dude. It's still viable. It's consistent. Doesn't matter. 1 in 1,000.
You said it's unlikely to be viable a few minutes ago.
I said it's unlikely to survive. Okay, but it's 100% viable.
So, 100%? It's not 100% viable.
It has 100% has an opportunity to live. Yes, that's what being alive means.
Then me masturbating
no, Andrew, because that's a different
100% viable life in the same way.
Andrew, for the 9th time.
Yeah, because there's a possibility.
Buddy, we're going to have to do the remedial test.
There's a possibility of some woman scooping up my sperm, putting it in her vagina, and getting pregnant. Therefore, me masturbating is just as viable as your arbitrary line.
It happens every once in a while to the best of us, buddy. We got to go back and study again, even though we've already done the test, okay? So something isn't alive until conception, buddy. So I don't care
something is not alive at conception, as you yourself have said at least twice.
No, Andrew. That's you who keeps saying the probability of survival determines whether it's alive. That's not me. Just because it's not 100%.
I didn't say that. I never said that.
Okay, dude, you can't even remember what you're saying, man. You can't remember what I'm saying.
You can't even remember what you're saying. I get pissed off because you won't admit something, and then you do admit it, and then you go back and say that you didn't admit it. And then you say that you have a consistent definition, and then you use 4 different definitions, and then you say they're still the same, and yet you don't want to draw subtlety between these 4 definitions, apparently meaning the same thing, yet you do want to point out some subtlety when you're apparently drawing the distinction between a woman going into an abortion clinic and getting an abortion, and a pregnant woman getting into a car accident, and having to choose between the life of the mother and the child, and choosing to kill the child to save the mother. You want nuance when you're comparing those two examples, yet you want 4 definitions to mean the same thing when you're defining what life is.
I don't want or not want the definitions to mean things, Andrew.
You just said that you were saying that there are 3 or 4 different definitions that you're going to explain, and you're going to explain how they're consistent. In the same way, someone going into an abortion clinic to get an abortion is just as consistent as a pregnant woman getting into a car accident and you having to choose between the life of the mother and the child. It's consistent in the same way that 4 definitions for the same thing are consistent.
I've done my best, dude. I do not think you've been operating in good faith. I don't think you have. I think
you're the one who's not been operating in good faith. You're changing your definitions, and then you're saying that you're not drawing the line at an arbitrary place, yet you're admitting that this is not actually life, and then you're saying that you want nuance when it comes to determining what qualifies as killing the baby, but it's not an abortion, even though it is killing a baby, because intentions matter there, but the intentions about the person who got the woman
I can't even hear you anymore.
Matter.
Dude, you're just running around like you're saying every time you open your mouth, you're saying 10 different things. It's like it's impossible to have a conversation with. I can't do it. And then anytime I try to state my position, you're telling me what my position is, and you're saying 10 more things. It's like there's nothing I can do.
And I ask you how that, and I keep asking you.
And then you cut me off when I try to tell you.
You keep interrupting me every 5 fucking seconds too, dude. And then I ask you how the implications of your position does not mean this, and you say it's not. And then if I eventually argue with you enough, you've admitted what I was so pissed off about a few times, but then you keep going back on what you've already admitted, and then you change your definitions, and you want nuance when it serves you, but not when it doesn't serve, in other cases when it serves me.
So just to illustrate my point, you literally cut me off to say 10 more things. I tried to get one sentence out. It's 10 more things. And what's going to happen now?
You keep interrupting me every time I talk too.
Okay. So it's not productive, man. It's not productive. You keep telling me. I haven't told you. I don't keep cutting you off to tell you what you're saying and not give you a chance to clarify. Okay. It's ridiculous. It's patently ridiculous. Like it should literally take me 3 minutes for me to clarify whether my definitions of life are consistent or not. And like it seems like you're intentionally talking over me to prevent me from doing that, and then calling me disingenuous for not doing it. I don't like it. I don't know if it's because you're emotional. I don't know what the fuck's happening. But like,
how come you can't have consistent definitions then and stick to them?
I literally used them all in the same sentence to show you how consistent they were.
They're not consistent. They're not consistent. That's not consistent at all.
Then please tell me what's inconsistent about this, but be precise and don't go into a whole rant. An egg meets a sperm. We call that conception, and that begins the process where a system is capable of performing functions such as the list goes on. I combined all my 3 definitions into one thing. How am I being inconsistent?
That's one definition.
That is the 3 I gave, and I've used them at the same time because they're internally consistent.
No.
Okay, precisely how wasn't that sentence? Sperm plus egg is called the conception event, which is when a system capable of performing these functions begins. Please explain to me what's inconsistent about that idea.
I don't understand what you're saying that idea is. You're saying that's conception?
My definition, I said life begins at conception. Conception is defined as an egg meeting a sperm. And the definition of life is a system that's capable of performing blah, blah, blah functions.
Okay, so that's by definition not conception then. Because that's different from what you said conception was.
Conception's a point in time, Andrew. Oh my God.
Yeah, so like I said, it's an arbitrary line that you're drawing. How is that not arbitrary?
We've already had this conference. I've already
You
answered
said
that question. Why do you
You
keep
said it's
repeating
a
it? I
point
don't
in
get it.
time.
I don't
It's a point in
understand you.
time. If it's a point in time, it can be any point in time. It's
Yes,
arbitrary.
that point in time where the sperm meets the egg. That's the non-arbitrary point.
But that's not life. That is
That's
arbitrary.
my definition of life, Andrew. You're just talking in circles, dude. And
You're talking in circles. I'm saying it's arbitrary. I'm saying it's arbitrary, and you're saying that's life.
That's not
I'm saying
what arbitrary means.
It's either arbitrary or it's not life. It's one or the other.
Hey, arbitrary, based on random choice or personal whim, rather than reason or a system. Okay?
Yeah, you're choosing that this qualifies as life, even though it's not even likely to become a person.
Dude, using the definition of life from a science textbook is not arbitrary. The science textbook didn't make
That's not the definition of life. Conception is not the definition of life.
That's the time when it begins, idiot. That's not the definition. Nobody thinks conception is the definition of life.
You said it is.
What conception means.
You said it is. You said conception. You said life begins at conception. Conception is not life by definition. You read me the definition of life.
You're so fucking dumb, dude. Conception is
You're so fucking dumb. You read the debunk of your own fucking definition.
You're so fucking dumb. Conception is point in time. That's the same. Angry, emotional man.
Idiot. You won't admit that you're okay with, by your own definition, killing babies if a pregnant woman gets in a car accident, but you're not okay if she goes into an abortion clinic. And you said that life begins at conception, and then you read me the definition of life, and it did not say conception.
That's the beginning point, you fucking idiot. It's the beginning point.
No, it's not. The beginning point
of the business was the day of incorporation, but incorporation day is not the corporation. Like it's the.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know what. That's what it begins. What are you even fucking talking about?
Life does not begin at conception.
That's what the definition of conception is, you fucking idiot.
No.
Those definitions of words.
The definition of conception and the definition of life are different. You read me two different definitions and said they're the same thing.
Oh my! I said. Oh my God.
Two definitions are by definition not the same thing.
I don't know.
You're saying that life begins at conception. Yes. Conception is life, and abortion is murder.
I never said conception is life. I never said that.
You said life begins at conception.
I never said that.
If life begins at conception,
I never said that.
Conception, not life.
I never said life is conception. I don't know why you keep trying to tell me what I said. That's the beginning of life. When does life begin for you?
How the fuck is saying life begins at conception different from saying life is conception?
I never said life is conception. What are you talking about? Nobody said that.
You just said that life begins at conception.
Life begins at conception. Life begins at conception. What is so complicated? I don't get it, man.
It doesn't.
When does it begin then? When does it begin?
You just, by the definition,
I'm asking you, Andrew, answer the question. When does it begin then?
You're the one who wants to go by dictionary definitions. According to the own fucking dictionary definitions that you read, that is not life.
You're not acting in good faith, dude. You're not acting in good faith.
You're not acting in good faith. You're using
different words back to me doesn't make it the case, dude. Okay, I'm done.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm done.
You're not. You're using 3 different definitions.
No, I'm not, Andrew. I've tried 5 fucking times.
Let's look. I'll screen share the I'll Google the definition of life and the definition of conception, and it's going to show different definitions.
I never said conception is life, you fucking idiot. How many times do I have to say it to you? Hit your bong again. You forgetting it as it fucking comes out my mouth.
You shut the fuck up. It's impossible for it to be the case that life begins at conception, yet conception is not life.
No,
if life has begun, then it is life by definition.
No, that's an event. Yeah. Conception's an event.
If life has begun, then it is a life.
Yes, but conception's an event, dude. Conception's an event in time. Conception's an event.
If you say it's the beginning of life, then when a life begins, it is a life.
Event that causes life to begin. That's what it means.
Yes. If it's an event that causes life to begin, that is by definition not a life.
That's the beginning of it. It becomes a life after that event.
If something causes a life to begin, it is by definition not a life.
Before conception, it's not alive. After conception, it is alive. What about that is too complicated for you to understand?
Because you said life begins at conception, yet you won't say
before conception, no life. After conception
is life. And then you just said that it's going to lead to life. But that's not the same thing as it being life.
I said it becomes viable. Okay, I did not say it wasn't alive from the very beginning. I've said the event that life begins at is that. I've never said and again, we've already had this conversation 3 times. You just don't remember it.
No, you keep saying that life begins at conception, yet it actually is before the point of what actually qualifies as a life.
No, Andrew, I didn't say that.
How can life begin at conception, yet it actually being something that's going to lead to life? If it's something that's going to lead to life, then it's by definition not actually a life yet.
It's a life after the conception event, Andrew. Do you know
after you just said yourself, after the conception event. That means by definition it is not a life.
So it's a life.
You're the one who's being completely 100% specific. You yourself said life begins at conception, and now you're saying it begins after conception. It's either at conception or after conception. It can't be both.
At conception means before conception it's not alive. After it is alive.
No. At, before, and after are 3 different words. And you just used all 3 of them synonymously.
At is the event. Before is before the event. After is after the event.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you just used them synonymously. You're using all 3 of them synonymously.
No, I'm not, Andrew. You just
Yes, you are.
Okay, do you want to say goodbye or not? I gotta go.
Okay. This was a fucking waste of time.
You talk in circles, dude. You should really be.
You talk in circles. You don't even have a fucking consistent definition or admit that you draw a line at an arbitrary place.
You get.
Fuck. Okay. Well, this was a disaster. We're just gonna end it here. Sorry for everyone for watching, for us yelling at each other. This was terrible. All right. Subscribe to the channel, click the like button. Look forward to my other videos that will be much better, like us talking about Taxi Driver this weekend. And adios until next time, everyone. The funk cures all. Groove is in the heart. Have your own opinions about abortion, and I'm sure this is a very contentious topic. I didn't even read the live chats because we got into such a heated argument. Anyway, adios until next time, everyone.